Hi everyone, my name is Jackie. I'm the founder of Kreativ, and I'm an artist based out of Plymouth, Massachusetts. Today I'm going to be taking you step by step through a really fun painting of an owl, where I do encourage you to make it your own. So today I'm going to be using acrylic paint, but you could use crayons, markers, colored pencils, watercolors, whatever you have. I'm going to show you my supplies, and while I'm showing you mine, if you want to grab yours, you sure can. You can use whatever colors you like, your favorite colors, and like I said, I'm using acrylic today. So I'm going to show you my supplies. I hope you're all having a nice day. Let me just switch this. All right. There we go. All right, so I actually ran out of my paper plates, and I don't have a palette here, so I just took one of my dinner plates and I wrapped it in tin foil. You could do that with saran wrap as well if you don't have any paper plates. Also, cardboard works as well. So this is my palette. I have two blues. I have a dark blue and a light blue. I have green, pink, orange, brown, and white. I will be using black later, but that will just be for my details, so I'm holding off so I have enough room on my palette. Next up, I have my paper towel. I also have 3 brushes today. We'll talk about those in a few. I have a big cup of water, and I have plastic and paper on my table. The plastic will really protect my tabletop, and the paper is a great tool to try things out, mix, blend, whatever I need to do. I can make a mess of that. I also have an apron on today. I'm using Craft Smart acrylic paint. I got this at Michael's, and let's talk about our brushes. So again, I have a palette of paint of my favorite colors, or whatever colors I want to use for today. I ran out of paper plates, so if you don't have a plate, you can always just wrap a dinner plate in foil or in plastic wrap. That will do. And if you don't have a canvas, you could just use a piece of cardboard that you cut out, or you could use a piece of paper. Whatever you have, just get creative. All right, so there we go. Let's talk about, I'm just going to put this back up so it might be a little shaky for a moment. And let's talk about brushes. So I like to have a few different size brushes, and I'm going to have 4 total brushes today, but I have a whole bunch on hand if I want to get, play with them. So whatever you have, grab them. I have a really big brush. This is my chip brush, and it's flat. This one is great. I'm going to use it in big areas. I can use the crazy tips to create some texture, and I don't put water on this one, so this one's going to stay dry. So this is my big brush, and it is flat. My next brush up today is my long brush, and this long brush is flat, and it's kind of like a little rectangle. This is a little guy, and he's also a flat brush. So I have this one here, my long brush, if you've painted with me before. And I also have this white grip brush. It's a little bit bigger in size, same flat brush, but just a little bit bigger. One more brush, let me just grab that, is a detail. So I have this round tip detail. It's very, very tiny, and that is my detail brush. So with all of those brushes, I like to hold them like a pen or a pencil for great control, and I play with the amount of pressure I have on my canvas or paper to determine the size of my mark. So it's kind of fun to just play with that and see what different marks you can make with the amount of pressure that you're putting on your brush. When I am changing colors, sometimes I just wipe off the extra paint on my paper towel or paper on my table and then go to my next color. So if I'm going from yellow to green, I'll just go ahead and wipe off and go to the next. But if you really need to get your brush nice and clean, if you're going from black to white, you're going to want to give it a nice wipe so I get all the extra paint off, and then I'm going to give it a wash, and then I'm going to wipe again. So it's wipe, wash, wipe. And hold on to those cups when you're cleaning them so your water doesn't spill. It happens, so don't be sad if it does. So I have my paint, my paper towel, my water cup, my brushes. Hi Lisa, it's been so long. Hope you're well. So I have my brushes, whatever brushes you have is perfect, and I have one other tool, and that is my finger. So I'm going to be using my finger to try things out before I go ahead up on my canvas. If you've colored with me, you've been doing that as well, and I think it's pretty handy. So let me know if you find if you using your finger is handy, is helpful. Let me know if you like doing that, because I really think it's important to kind of plan out my painting or whatever I'm going to be doing before I go ahead with my paintbrush. A few things I'm just going to tell you about is if you think you've made a mistake, which there are no mistakes. Hi Adam, if you think you've made a mistake, again, there are no mistakes in painting or in art, but you can do a few different things. One, you can take a little piece of your paper towel, rip it off, wipe out the extra paint, and then you can let it dry and paint over it. Or you can just leave your paint there, let it dry, paint over it. I see sometimes people kind of applying layers and layers, almost like a whole bunch of Band-Aids on top of like a mistake. And that kind of gets muddy. So if you either wipe it out or let it dry completely, you're going to have a better chance of covering it up. I'm using acrylic paint. It dries really fast. It's water-based. And so when you add your paint to your brush, you want to make sure your brush is dry so you don't have drips coming down. This paint does not need any water to move, okay? So if you're using watercolor, totally different, but with acrylic paint, every time I dip into my water, I want to make sure I dry that off. All right, make this your own. I want to see some really creative ideas, and maybe add stars to your sky, maybe add a couple owls, change the colors. We'll talk about that later, but let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let me just turn this up. Alrighty. Okay. All right, so like I said, we're going to use our finger first, and my first shape is going to be a big U, and this is going to be the base shape of my owl. And I want to keep in mind the placement. Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I want to keep in mind the placement of my owl so I have enough room for my tree branch. So with my finger, I'm going to create a big U. I want to make sure I have enough room for above his ears, below for the branch. Again, make that shape with your finger, really picturing it right on your canvas. All right, I think I see it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my long brush, this little guy here. So if you're trying to make a thin line with your brush, I want to, let's use our imagination for a moment. Pretend we're ice skating, all right? So we're on the ice, we have ice skates on our feet, and we're gliding on that ice, right? And we look behind us, and on the ice, you see a really thin line, okay? So with a flat brush like these, here is the edge of my ice skate, and here is my toe, right? So I am going to stand my ice skate up on my ice or my canvas, and all I do is slide my arm up. Wherever that toe goes, I'm going to turn my brush, and that's how I'm going to get a really thin, controlled line. I talked about the pressure before. That will really determine how much pressure you put on your canvas, will also determine how big that line is. So you really want to barely let your bristles touch the canvas, and you're going to get a super thin line. Stand up your ice skate, glide on that ice, barely pushing on there, so don't bend your bristles. All right, here we go. I'm going to start with a very, very light blue because I want this to almost be like a pencil mark, and I want to be able to add colors, change things, and go over it. So I'm going to do nice and light. I'm going to get my U down, which is the base shape of my owl. Here we go. So I have my brush. I'm adding some white. I have a light blue, so I have white and light blue on my brush. I'm going to wipe off on both flat sides. What this does, it compresses my bristles and gets all the extra paint off. And now I'm going to go up onto my canvas. So here we go. Again, with that finger one more time, get it down, stand your ice skate up on your canvas, and see if you can use that toe just like that. You can do this with crayons, you can do this with markers, colored pencils, whatever you have. All right, we got that U down. Let's add one more. I'm going to do the top of my owl's head, which is just another U connecting both ends. So here we go. Hi, Pa. And I'm going to scoop up, use that finger first. Just like that. Awesome, great job. All right, so while I'm here and with that light blue, let's go ahead and get our branch in. I'm going to use my finger again to kind of draw the branch before I use my brush. I'm going to think about our branch, right? The branch part that connects to my tree is going to be the thickest part of the branch. As it grows out, it's going to get thinner and thinner, so keep that in mind. I want my owl to really be sitting comfortably on my branch, so I want to make sure that he's touching the branch, right? So if you take a peek here, the top of my branch is right here touching my owl. So it's not floating down here unless he's flying, but mine is nice and comfy. So I'm going to take that same color and I'm going to get my first line in. This is, again, is white with a little bit of blue, creating a very light blue. So white, a little bit of blue. Let's use that ice skate again. I'm going to draw that line. This is going to be the top line of my branch. And I'm going to do one. I'm going to pretend I'm going right through my owl. And I'm actually going to create a little bit of an angle up. So my branch is going to make kind of like a Y shape here. So I just created a little angle up. All right, actually, let me show you. There you go. All right, cool. So now, like I was saying, our branch starts thicker towards when it's attaching to the tree. And as it goes, it gets a little bit thinner, right? Keep that in mind. Use your finger first. I'm going to move down just a little bit on the side that I'm saying is attached to the tree. And then I'm going to just glide my finger across, getting a little bit closer to that top line as I go across. I am going to get a little fancy and add a split to my branch here. So keep that in mind. If you want to just have one branch going out, perfect. So let's go ahead and add our second part to our, so I'm going to have it go right underneath his little owl bum. And right about here is where I'm going to create that Y, or that split where that branch is. All right, very cool. Your branch could be totally different. All trees, all branches are different, so there are no wrongs. I'm going to add my split, which is a V, which is going to be inside of this little part here. So I'm just going to use that edge. Try to use that edge of your branch. And there it is. Cool. I'll add a few more branches onto this a little bit later, but I'm just going to keep that main part how it is. All right, let's continue back up to our owl and let's talk about breaking it up into a few different sections. All right. So I am going to create 3 sections of my owl. The head, I'm going to have my feathers, and then I'm also going to add this bottom part here, maybe their pants, whatever you like them to be. Of course, you can add any colors you like and add any kind of pattern you like as well. So I'm going to continue on with my light blue. I have white, I have light blue, and I have my finger. I am going to create a slight curve, or like a smile, which is going to be this line here. So by creating a slight curve to it, it creates a little bit of roundness to my owl. If I were to go flat, it would have been more flat, right? It would create more of a flat effect. So I want to have 3 sections, and I want to have my first section to have this little curve. So I want to picture some eyeballs and my little beak, and then I can draw my line. So maybe you're like, I just want to have 2 sections, that's fine, but for mine, I'll have 3. So I'm going to picture it, I'm going to draw that curve right across, and I'm going to ice skate just like that. Great job. Again, you can use crayons, markers, colored pencils, whatever you have, watercolor, whatever you have is perfect. All right, cool. So now I have my top part. Now I need to make 2 more, and I'm going to make my my ruffly feathers for my next section. So this is going to be a scallop or like a smile, a curve, which is going to create my little feathers. I'm going to do that all the way across the bottom or the middle of my owl. And these are just small little U's or smiles. So I'm going to start moving my finger down, just kind of picturing it. And I'm going to add these little U's right across. Now my owl, I could stop right at the edge, but I want to have a little bit of interest. So I'm going to add a little bit of a poof out on each side of the feathers poking out. So again, instead of adding a little bit more paint, make sure you're wiping on both flat sides, compressing your bristles, getting extra paint off, and riding that ice skate. All right, so I'm going to do one more here and one more on this side. Now, when you're painting, I like to think about what's on top of what, the layers, right, in different colors. It's kind of like, you know, really plan when you're painting. So I'm thinking about what feathers go on top of what, right? So this feather here, there's a feather on top of it, and then there's a feather on top of this one, right? So they're layering each other. So I'm going to start with that base, and now I'm going to add my second, and then I'm going to do a third. Also, you can think about how you want your curves or your U's to line up. Do you want it to look almost like bricks? So it would be every middle part would be the center of one, or are you just like, I don't mind, just whatever happens, happens. I'm going to do a little bit of both. I'm going to kind of think about, hello, I'm going to think about how big I want them and how spaced out I would like them. All right. So my second U's, I'm going, and maybe you're going to have a few more rows than me. I'm going to go past on each side just like I did before. I'm going to add one more. Maybe you have 4 rows. Maybe you just have 2. Perfect. All right. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to let that be for now, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start adding my my eyes and my nose. So this is going to be the placement for my eyes and my nose. My eyes, I decided to do big eyes that are just circles. Hi Andy, how are you? I hope you have some good cookies. And I'm going to add 2 circles for my eyes, and then I'm going to do a diamond for my nose. So before I go up with my brush, again, I'm going to use my finger, and I'm going to use the same color. This is just like our pencil mark. So I have that white, I have that blue, and I'm going to use my finger. Now, how close do you want your eyes? How big do you want your eyes? Do you want winking? Whatever you want. Maybe practice on another piece of paper or on your tabletop if you have a piece of paper on there before you go up on your canvas, and then again with your finger. So I'm going to go ahead, add my circles with my finger, really picturing them. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use that ice skate, and you don't have to do a circle in one swoop. You can kind of work it a little bit at a time, creating that circle. So I have one. Now I'm going to try to do the same size, or maybe you want to do different. That would be kind of cool. On this side here, these eyes are close together. I'm using that edge of that brush, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make that triangle, not triangle, well, 2 triangles, that diamond for my little beak. So my little beak is right in between my eyes. So I'm going to create a like an upside down V first, using that edge of that brush. If you're drawing with your detail brush, you want to use it like a pen or a pencil and just use that tip of the brush, so barely touching. We'll talk more about our detail later, but just in case you're using it, you want to use it like you're tickling, so barely touch, all right? So I have that V. Now I'm going to do another one, creating my diamond. And it can overlap a part of the line, that's fine. Whatever works for you in your painting, your canvas is best. Keep going. I'm going to grab my phone charger don't you go anywhere, and keep working on adding your eyes and your feathers if you haven't yet. So stay right there. I'll be right back. All right. Almost there. Oops. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so I think we're good. Yay. All right. All right, so we kind of mapped out our painting, and now let's start adding some fun colors and details. So I am going to start blocking in my big colors, which are the head and the feathers and the lower part of that body. And then I'm going to switch to my background, then add the details onto my owl, and we'll just keep going from one to the other. So you have to kind of, like I said before, be a little patient when you're painting because things need to dry before you can add on top of them, or it'll just get really muddy. All right, so I'm going to be doing, I'm going to use green, blue, and pink for my owl, but you could use whatever colors make you happy, as many colors as you'd like as well. To help with coverage, I like to add a little bit of white to whatever color I'm using. And I'm going to be using a couple different brushes. So when you're painting, you want to think about how big is my area that I'm painting, right? If I have a big space, I'm going to use a big brush. If I have a tiny little space that I need to paint, it's going to be a tiny brush. So ask yourself that question when you're painting. How big is this space? What brush would be best? And that's really helpful. It'll actually make things easier. So I'm going to be using my white grip brush. I'm also going to be using my long brush to get some nooks and crannies. And I'm going to start with my green. So I'm going to be using green. I have Apple Tart, which is a light green, and I have some white, which I'm going to start with. Now those blue lines I'm going to paint over. Those are just my pencil marks. So I'm just going to take my time. And once you get your paint up there, you can decide if you want to add more of the color, more white. I tend to let my colors blend on my canvas rather than mix. I mean, of course, there are times where I'm going to be mixing on my palette, but a lot of times I like to see the variations, and meaning I like to see, you know, the white and the green kind of blend together right on my canvas. I think that creates some interest. I see lights, I see darks. But if you want it solid, you can mix your color right on your plate. All right. Just dipping in. And if you're like, what the heck is your paint on? I ran out of paper plates, and what I find works great is just using like a dinner plate, and I wrap it in tin foil or saran wrap, and it is perfect. So if you don't have a paper plate, that works. Cardboard, whatever you got. If you don't have canvas, cardboard, paper, you can get creative. Awesome. All right. I know that I'm going to do some green and blue stripes down on the bottom part of my owl. So I'm going to use this green now, and I'm just going to start creating my green stripes. One, and I'm following that curve. Two, and you can use that same combo, that green and that white. And one more. Do you want to add maybe flowers, hearts, whatever you want to add into your owl? You don't have to do stripes. You can do polka dots, whatever makes you happy. And of course, again, whatever color makes you happy. All right. So I have my top of my owl. I have my stripes, and I'm going to switch colors now. So I'm going to be using pink, and I'm going to start using pink and white to fill in my feathers. if you start losing your hues, right, that's okay when you're filling it in. If it starts turning into one solid, that's fine, because we'll go back later and outline. I'm going to be outlining mine in black, but you could do a different color, or if you did white with pink, you could do a pure pink for your outline as well. I'm going to use the same brush, so I need to wipe, and then I'm going to dip right on into my pink and my white. So here we go. What's good about having like a big glass of water for your brush is that the water doesn't get dirty as fast, right? All right. So I have my white grit brush again. I'm going to dip into the white and into the pink. Hi, Carrie. I'm looking forward to painting with you tomorrow. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start filling in. And if you wanted to, you could start in on that bottom or wherever you'd like. And I'm welcoming that blue shining through because that's going to really help me keep my shape when I add my outline. You may go over it if you'd like with a different color later, like I will, or you can say, I like it, and just leave that. So I'm just going in, filling in each of those hues. And you could do multiple colors. You could keep them all the same. You could do that same thing that I did up top by having the white and the pink on my brush and just allowing it to kind of marble or mix right on there. And I could maybe do 2 coats, right? I could let that dry and add some more details to it later. So don't think that, you know, once you paint it, it's final. You could always add more details, more colors to it later. I'm gonna add that outline later, so I'm just gonna let that be. So now I have that blue to go. If you know, again, any color that makes you happy, but I'm gonna switch over to my blue. So I'm just gonna wipe off this brush, maybe give it a quick little wash, and then I'm gonna go into that light blue and I'm gonna add a little bit of white to it as well. All right, so I have my blue. I'm gonna add a little bit of white to that. So I have 2 colors on my brush and I'm gonna start filling in. Now, before I go up there, I wanna wipe on both flat sides because I got a little bit too much paint on my brush and I'm working in not a huge space. So maybe I'd switch to a smaller brush, but definitely I'm gonna wipe off just so I have a little bit more control. And I'm also gonna be very aware of my bristles and the direction of my brush so I can keep it inside those stripes. So here I go. Still thinking about that ice skate. Be aware of the edge of your brush. And remember that original blue line was just an outline or a pencil mark, so I can go right over that. And if you're just jumping on and you know someone who would like to paint, color, once this is over, you can share the video. And if you don't have paints, crayons, markers, anything will be perfect. All right, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and I have the blue still on my brush. I'm gonna add that to my eyes. I'm gonna fill in the whole thing because I know that I can put that black pupil and the white dots right on top of it once it dries. So I'm going to continue with this blue. I'm going to fill in my eyes. You could do whatever color makes you happy. Think about the size of the brush. All right, cool. Great. So I'm going to pick up my long brush. I'll throw this one in the water. You can wash it if you'd like. And I am going to switch on over I have one more color that I want to add before I let it dry, and that is going to be my orange. So you could do straight orange, orange with a little bit of white. Maybe I'll add a little bit of white just for coverage. And I'm going to add that. And I'm actually going to add my feet too. So I have my orange on my brush, and they're just almost like a W with one more. No, kind of like a W. All right. So I'm just going to add these little bumps right down here. Bump, bump, bump. Hanging on to that branch. Hi, Paul. How are you? It's nice to see everyone. So I have my orange down. I have all of my main colors on my all right. And I'm going to now start working on my background. I'm going to let my owl dry. Then I'll go back and add all of those other details. So I am going to go ahead and dip right on into my brown, because orange and brown are close. So I'm just going to go right in. I don't need to wash it. And I'm going to add my first layer of brown to my branch. Again, those pencil marks or those light brown was just our pencil marks, so you can go right over it. I also can kind of change anything on my branch now. And when you're painting and you get close to the edge, if you want to wrap whatever you're doing right onto the side of your canvas, we're finishing that edge. So whatever you have right here, I'm just going to paint the sides. That's an option. Paint that little space there. I'm just going to outline. So I just kind of quickly outlined first, and now I'm just filling in just for a little bit more of a cleaner line. Now I have the option to add some more branches, but I'm going to wait until I have my background down. I'm going to let it dry, and then we'll add more branches on top. So now I'm going to focus up on my my background of my canvas. Now my owl is in the night, so I'm going to squeeze out a little bit of black because I want to play with black and my dark blue. You might want it to be daytime, or you could just do a dark blue, whatever you'd like for your background, but I'm going to use black and dark blue, this guy here. Also, we have kind of a big space to work in. I'm going to think about the direction of my brush stroke, and I'm also going to think about what brush I should use. So I'm going to be using my white grip, and I'll probably be using this guy too, just to get in any nooks and crannies, any smaller parts, and if I have to, I can pick up my detail as well. If you have a real big area, feel free to add your big brush as well. So I'm going to put down that one, grab my white grip, and I am going to add a squirt of the black paint. Just be careful it doesn't get all in your other paint. All right, so I'm going to add dark blue, and I'm going to add a corner of the black, and I'm going to see what happens. We've been working this way the whole time through our painting about kind of letting our paint mix on the canvas. So I'm going to allow there to be lights and darks with my blue-black combo. And when I get close to my owl or my branch, I'm going to slow down and just take my time just so I have a nice edge and I don't paint my owl if I'm not trying to. So here I go. I'm going to see what this combo does, and once I put it on, I can say, okay, do I want to get darker or do I want to get lighter? Remember, you always want to dry your brush off, wipe your brush off before going up on your canvas once you dip it into that water. think about the direction of your brush stroke. Are you going to keep that direction going the same way throughout the background, or are you going to change it up? Once I get close to my owl, I'm going to slow it down. And if I needed to, I could switch brushes. I'm just going to go this way for a second, but I'll go up and down. There we go. I'm allowing there to be darks and lights in my blue-black combo. I think that creates some interest into my background. All right, so I'm going to work over here. So I have that blue, I have black, and I suggest if you're outlining at all, I don't outline my whole thing, then go and paint in the big areas because I will see that outline. So if I just outline a little, then fill it in. Clean up that edge, brush it up, move it over. So if I outline, I work in small areas. Great job. Dipping into the blue, dipping into the black. Sometimes it's just fun moving paint on your canvas. Just blocks of color. You always could do that and then go back in and just do some outlines of shapes on top of it, or add some words to create some simple art. It's just good to kind of, or it feels good to move that paint, that color on your canvas. Kind of just get lost in it. Take your time, put on some music. All right, just keep going. Again, outline in small areas and then paint. Thinking about your brush stroke, thinking about how much paint is on your brush. I always say you want to feel as though you are frosting a cupcake rather than scrubbing a stain out of a carpet, right? Cupcakes are a lot more fun than a stain, so you want to move that paint very easily across your canvas, but of course you don't want drips. Now I have a small area here, so I'm going to use my long brush to get this little area, but I'm going to continue. And I'm going to switch this way. So I'm keeping my brush stroke the same direction. If you want to play around and do different brush strokes, that would be cool too. I outline and then I go back and pull in the same direction of the rest of my painting just to keep everything all the same. Cool. So I'm going to grab that smaller brush just to do that little tiny corner right there. Awesome. So now that I have my background down, I can start thinking about what other, what do I want to add to my background? Do I want to do the swirls like I have, or do you want to do stars? Do you want to do a moon? Whatever you'd like, you can add. So I am going to start playing with my details of my owl, and I'm going to start focusing on my feathers and I'm going to start building that up. I'm going to bring you a little bit closer just to see a little bit closer details of on my owl, and then we'll get started. So maybe this is a great time if you have a tiny brush, get that, just so we have a few other size brush marks to play with. So I'm just going to bring you a little bit closer to see mine first. So it might be a little rocky for a moment, but just hold on. So let's see. All right, so on this guy here, I have some little dots. We'll use the back of our brushes. I'll show you that. I have some dashes up here, and I have some lines up in here. So of course you can do whatever you want, but I just wanted you to see my painting just a little bit closer. So I'm going to put you back up. I hope you're having a good day. All right. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to let that dry just for another minute, and then we'll get started on our details. All right. Just 1 minute. Hello. All right. So start thinking about what details you want to add into yours. Does your owl have a hat on? Does it have a bow? Does it have eyelashes? Start planning that out while our paint is drying. Maybe grab a snack. All right, there we are. Okay, so I'm going to start by using a little bit of white paint, and I'm going to be using my detail, and I'm also going to be using my long brush to play with. If you're unsure about that ice skate, I'm just going to show you one more time. To get a nice thin line, I like to think of this bottom part of my brush as an ice skate. So that's the blade of my ice skate. This is the toe in my ice skate, and that's what's in charge. So the bottom is going to be flat right up against my ice or my canvas, nice and flat. My toe is in charge, so wherever that goes, I turn my whole brush and I glide. I don't use the corner, I use it nice and flat, and that gets you a really nice thin line. Another trick with a flat brush is to, once I put paint on there, pretend this is my plate, I wipe off on both flat sides, and that gets all the extra paint off, and it really tightens my bristles and allows it to get a nice sharp line. All right, I think we're good. So I'm going to grab my my paint. I'm going to grab my detail brush and maybe even my long brush, just so I have a few different size brushes to play with. Just going to clean that off. Now be thoughtful of how you're holding your brush. I hold it nice and low like a pen or a pencil when I'm using it, and remember that edge. Play with the amount of pressure. So I'm just going to start playing with some marks on my canvas, and I'm going to start with adding some dots. I'm actually going to use the back end of my brush, so the back end, and I'm tapping on into my black paint, so the back of my brush has paint on it, and all I'm going to do is tap and lift, tap and lift. And what that is going to do, it's going to create some little dots. I'm going to do it right above my feathers, following the edge. So just dip and tap, dip and tap. Now, you're going to notice that if your brush is really tiny, you're going to have a small little tiny dot, and if you have a bigger brush, dipping that back in, your dot's going to be bigger, and you want to lift, put on your canvas and then lift, all right? If you smush it, you're going to get a smushy line. So put it on and lift off. Yeah, that's perfect size. And with decorating our owl, of course, you can add whatever you would like. I'll just show you what I've added. But I would love to see what you come up with. All right, cool. So I'm going to add the pupils, the dark part of my eyes, and I'm going to use my detail brush for this. So I am going to take my detail, I'm dipping it on into my black paint, and I'm going to use it like I'm tickling someone. So just the tips of my bristles, and I'm going to create a little bit of a circle for the center of my eyes. So I'm going to put my brush down and I'm going to wiggle it out in a circular motion. I'm going to lift up every once in a while to see, well, how am I doing? Is it a circle? Is it an oval? How big is it? So slow it down. So here I go, figuring out where. So this is going to show me where my owl is looking. I want mine looking right ahead. You might want yours looking up, so you just change the position of those centers of the eye. So I just put my brush and I'm wiggling, but I'm not putting much pressure on it because I don't want to hurt my brush. Maybe one is bigger than the other. Maybe they're really big. How's that? That looks good. All right. So I'm going to let that dry before I put my white highlight on it. And I'm going to start working on my whites. So I'm going to take my detail brush. I'm going to give it a quick wash, wipe or wipe, wash, wipe, and then I'm going to dip on into my white paint. So get your brush ready. Of course, you could do different colors. You don't have to do what I'm doing. So I have my detail brush, I wiped it off, it's dry, and I'm going to dip on into the white paint. And I'm going to start adding in some detail. So here I'm going to add just these little lines. So I'm just putting my brush down and pulling to create these little dashes, and I'm just following right around. If you want to do the same amount, just count, plan it out. Awesome. And I'm just going to do some loose kind of outlining. I'm just adding a little bit of detail to my owl. If you see here in mine, maybe it kind of gives a little bit of a textured look. It's not totally solid. You can make little feathers here and there. That would be cool. Anything, it would be awesome. So just add whatever details you would like. But I'm just going to add a few little marks. And I'm actually holding my brush a little further back. And I'm just using the tips of my bristles. Just adding a little bit of interest to my owl. I think he's cute. In my feathers, I have, in the pink feathers, I just have another curved line towards the bottom of that U. It just creates a little bit of a pop in interest. You could do different colors, you could do lines going this way, but I'm just going to follow the shape of my bottom of my U. I will be outlining in black later. So back into my white paint, I'm using the tips of my bristles. Think about tickling someone, holding it like a pen or a pencil or wherever feels comfortable to you. One trick I have with a round brush or detail brush is on the side of my plate, instead of wiping on each side, I put it down and I roll it. So think about sharpening a pencil. That's how you want to feel like you're doing with your brush. And what that does, it compresses your bristles, making it nice and pointy, and it gets all the extra paint off. So I'm going to go back up there and I'm just going to be adding little U's or curves to the bottom of my feathers. You could do this in a different color. Oop. One thing, and I just did it, I had paint on the side of my hand and my hand touched my canvas, so I got a little bit of black paint on there. So just be aware of your hand. If it is clean and your painting is dry, of course you can put your hand down, but if it's not, maybe use a pinky, like a kickstand, or just hover your hand above it. One thing you can think about is your canvas is not stuck on your easel or flat on your table. You can pick it up, you can turn it around, you can hold it, so just be mindful of that. But I'm just going to let that be. Maybe I'll turn it into something. So I'm just going to continue on adding these little smiles right on my feathers. It'd be cool maybe to add another color. just like that. All right. So I'm going to now focus back on my branch. I'm going to add a few more little branches, and I can do a second coat as well. So I'm going to grab my long brush. You could use whatever brush works for you. I'm going to try to get some thinner branches because off of my main branch, then I have like my twigs and my smaller branches, right? So think about that, how big you want your mark to be. Joe, hi Joe. And I'm going to be using my detail brush and my long brush. So I'm going to grab that, and I have that here, and I'm going to dip on into that brown paint. Now, I like to say that our twigs are, all right, so our main branch is our highway, all right, or our road. And now we're going to turn off to another road or going into a driveway. All right, so think about this. The car is driving on that street, and now I'm going to turn and go right off. All right, and that's going to create a really nice transition from my main branch to my twigs. So let's go ahead and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here's my main highway, right? My main street. I can even do a second coat while I'm here. And now I'm going to ride my ice skate right on that main highway, and I'm going to exit off onto a different street. I'm gliding right on that edge. And if I wanted to, I could go down another street. So I go back here and off. And I could pick up my detail brush and add little tiny twigs off of that as well. And I'm going to add, since I did a second coat on this side, I'm going to do a second coat on that side. And just be aware that the background color may be still wet. I'm going to add a little branch off of this, so think about that, driving that ice skate again. And I have one more branch that I'm going to add, which is on this side here. Again, driving on that main highway, exit off or pull into that driveway. Now, this is actually a great example. Sounds good, Joe. So I have that right there, and I see how it doesn't look like it's connecting quite right to my tree. So all I'm going to do is go back down and connect that. So I have a nice branch right off of there. Awesome. All right, cool. So I could add twigs with my detail brush if I'd like. I could add more branches. I could have branches from other trees coming in from other parts of my canvas. Like, let's see, I can show you over here. We can say that our owl's sitting in our tree and there's branches above. So maybe there's a branch coming right in from up here. Why not? But you can do whatever you like. So one other thing that would be kind of cool, would it be neat to see like a crescent moon or a full moon in your painting as well. So if your background is dry, this is where we can start adding some details into our background. I'm going to show you my swirls, and I might add a few stars in there. We can add stars by using the back of our brush, or of course drawing a full star. So we can start thinking about that. So I have my branch in, I added all my twigs and branches. I gave a second coat to my main branch, and I have most of my details drying in my body of my owl. I still have a lot of outlining, and I can add more details to it as well. So when I am ready, I can start adding some leaves into my painting. Think of them as like a shape of a football or an eye, but there's so many different shaped leaves, so you can get creative with the shape of your leaf. I'm going to play with the green and the white combo. You could add different greens. You could add green with blue, green with brown, green with white, green with yellow, whatever color makes you happy. You could add flowers to your trees. So start thinking about how you would like your tree to be. I'm going to start with my long brush. I'm going to wipe this off and get it ready for my green paint. So when you are wiping your brush, let me just show you that. Here's my paper towel. I don't smush the bottom. I'm very gentle with my brush because I want it to stay nice and happy and not all blown out and poofy. So pretend this is my paper towel, right? You don't want to do that, but I just wipe like that, and then I'll wash and then wipe again. So just be kind to your brush. I am going to start adding my almost like footballs to my, which are my leaves, to my tree. And I think it's interesting to think about the placement of your leaves. Which direction are they going? They're not stuck on my branch. They are coming from my branch, but they are in their own space. And I can play with size as well. So play with size, play with maybe some different color combinations, and also play with the direction of them, and it'll add some interest. Maybe there are some that are coming in from the side, so they're just poking in. So get creative with that. All right, so here we go. I'm going to add that green, and I have a little bit of white, and maybe this time I could mix it on my palette. We've been mixing it on our canvas, but why not change it up a little bit? I'm going to use that edge of my brush, and I'm going to start creating my leaves. So they're just two curves that are meeting. Think about placement, think about size. Maybe you have a little bit different shape. I'm going to add a little bit of detail to my leaves later. Add a few over here. And if you're using your flat brush, don't forget to wipe and compress your bristles and get the extra off. All right, so I did add another branch up here, so I'm going to go ahead and add a few little leaves poking in up here. You could say that there's branches that you don't see and you can just put leaves poking in. It's dark anyway, right? So I don't have to have all of my branches in. I can just say there's maybe a leaf here poking in. All right, cool. All right, so I am going to start adding a few of my swirls. Maybe you want to do stars, hearts, whatever you'd like. But I'm going to pick up my detail brush. I'm going to actually start with white. I'm going to let that white dry, and then I'm going to go over it with the color just so I have a real pop of color. If I were to do just that, the color itself, it might not be as bright as if I kind of primed it with that white and then added the color. So I'm going to put down my long brush, pick up my detail brush, dip on into my white paint. I'm going to hold my brush a little further back. Maybe practice that rolling on the side of your plate like you're sharpening your pencil. And I'm going to go ahead and create. And every time I make my swirls, I am dipping. And sometimes I don't have like a solid line and it's kind of dotted. That's fine because I'll clean that back up when I add my color, or I could just do a second coat. So right now I'm just kind of getting those shapes down, or those swirls down. You can play with different size. Maybe these are your stars. Maybe your swirl starts the other way. They don't have to be the same. And I did mention that you could maybe add some dots for stars. You could do maybe yellow or stick with your white and just use the back of that brush, tap on in, and then you're just going to tap right on your canvas, which you're going to create little dots. If you tap, tap, tap and let it all kind of just run out, you're going to get different size dots, which will create interest and add a little bit of depth into your sky, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to start tapping right on to my canvas. And you could do this with yellow, you could do this with the white. I'm saying that these are my stars. If you have some glow in the dark paint, that would be really cool too, to add some glow in the dark stars. All right, so I have my main swirls down. I'm gonna let those dry and I'll add some color to them in a little bit. But now I can go back up to my owl and finish adding those details. So I have that white on my back of my brush because I was adding my stars. I'm gonna keep that on there and I'm gonna add little dots. This is gonna be the reflection of their pupil, which are just little dots. Maybe they're on this looking the same way. So I'm gonna put one on the left side and put the other one on the left side as well. Or right, whatever side you like. All right, very cool. So now with my detail brush, I'm gonna start outlining. So like I said before, if your hand is clean and your canvas is dry, you can put your hand down or you can use your pinky just like a kickstand. Your painting is not, well, it can move, right? So you can pick it up, you can turn it around. It doesn't have to stay on your easel or flat on your table. So I am going to start outlining. So here we go. I'm gonna roll that right on the side of my plate, getting it nice and sharp, the perfect amount, and play with where it feels comfortable on your brush. Nice and low or a little further back, whatever makes you happy. And I am going to start outlining. And I'm gonna do a lot of dipping because that brush is tiny and doesn't hold a lot of paint, but it sure does get me. And you could totally do this with a different color. It'd be kind of cool with like purple. So I'm just gonna take my time and add any outlines I'd like. As you can see, I'm running out of paint as I go, but I kind of like that look. So if you wanted to go back and add a second coat and cover that up, or if you want to just welcome that, it's your painting, so you can do whatever you like. So at this point, I'm really going to take a step back and look at my owl. Do I want to add any other details? Do I want to add any colors? Because my first layer is dry, this is a great time to be able to layer and add more colors to that owl. But I'm just going to continue on with my outlining. Again, just be aware of your hand if you're putting it on your painting. And if you are using crayons or colored pencils or markers, you still have to kind of be aware of that as well. So I'm going to just outline this. You could pick up your long brush if you want to use that ice skate. And think about, do I want to outline my stripes or whatever details I have in my owl? If you have any ideas of what you would like to paint or create, send me a message. I would love to hear from you. And I'm going to add 2 little dots up here. I'm going to outline my little nose. Again, think about the amount of pressure you're putting on your brush. The more pressure, the bigger the mark. And I'm going to add my outline here. Do you want to add eyelashes? Whatever makes you happy. All right, I'm going to do my feet. And I would do my my branch as well. I'll skip that just so you don't have to watch me outline. But we can talk about our details in our leaves. So I'm just going to create the center vein and maybe a few lines coming right off of it just to add some interest. So I'm going to use black, but you could maybe use a dark green or maybe orange would be kind of cool, whatever color you'd like. I'm going to stick with my black. I'm going to use the tip of my bristles and I'm going to make a center line and then I'm going to do a few lines right off of it, just kind of like our branch. Let's see. And I'm going to start from the base, the part that attaches to my tree. And then I'm just going to do a few lines right off. You can do the same amount of lines or different. I kind of like having them stagger a little. Just adding any details. Start thinking about if you want to add a moon, or maybe add some flowers, or add any other details to our owl. Maybe add a word. Or the name of your owl. All right. So now that my swirls are probably dry, I can go back in and add my color to them. So I'm going to just clean off my brush and I'm going to start adding some color into my sky just for interest. You could maybe, you can do any color you want. I'm going to stick with the colors that I have already in my painting, but you can introduce new ones as well. So I'm just going to wipe off my brush, give it a quick little wash. All right, so I am going to use that light blue and I'm going to add some right on top. If you're like, I like the way it looks with the white, you can just leave it. But I would go in and I would add with my brush all my blues, all my pinks, all whatever color, so I'm not dipping in and washing a million times. But you can add any other details you'd like. Don't forget to sign or initial wherever it makes you happy. I like to sign an initial on the bottom right-hand corner, but you could do it maybe on your stick or in your sky might be really cool. So kind of play with that. And I hope you had fun and I hope to paint with you again soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day and thanks again. Bye.